everyone. I'm Nidhi Paplani Kapoor, Head of Symbiosis Center for European Studies, and I welcome you all to the second track of the day today, Building a Supportive Ecosystem. I would like to invite the chair of this track, Dr. Fiona Hunter, who is the Associate Director at the Center for Higher Education Internationalization at the Università Cattolica del Sacro Cuore in Milan, Italy. She is also a visiting professor at the University of Bath in the UK. Dr. Fiona serves as a member of the International Advisory Board at the Universidad de Granada in Spain and is a member of the Scientific Council of APRO, which is the Holy See's Agency for Evaluation and Promotion of Quality in Ecclesiastical Universities and Faculties. She is also the co-editor of the prestigious Journal of Studies for International Education and is also a higher education consultant. With Niels Parnon, she is also co-author of the Illustrated Guide to Higher Education Management for New Leaders and New Institutions. Fiona is a Doctor of Business Administration and Higher Education Management. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Fiona. The platform is all yours.
Thank you, Nidhi, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody joining us from around the world today. This conference has a theme of reimagining internationalization, blended education as a catalyst. And in particular, in this session, we're looking at how we might build a supportive ecosystem that hopefully not only reimagines internationalization, but has the power to transform it. I would like to say a few words about how we might understand such an ecosystem. But first of all, let me introduce our panel. I confess that I'm not in a position to give such a detailed introduction as Nidhi just gave me, but I hope everybody has access to the panel's bios via the website. I think you understood from Nidhi's presentation of my career so far that I actually consider myself to be very much a hybrid in higher education because I've worn many different hats, and I think this diversity has enabled me to really understand the work that I do. And I hope that my colleagues here joining me on the panel do not mind if I define them as hybrids as well, because I see them all with such vast and varied experience, both from within and beyond higher education. And I can see that they've been able to put that diversity to good use in making change happen in their respective spheres of influence. I'm joined by 4 colleagues today, Mr. Michael Gabel, who is the Director at the Higher Education Policy Unit at the European University Association in Belgium. And Michael works at policy level, but brings a lot of diversity, not only in higher education in general, but in learning and teaching, lifelong learning, digitally enhanced learning, and of course, internationalization. Joining me today is also Mr. Raghav Gupta, Managing Director at Course ERA for India and the Asia Pacific. And he brings experience also from a wide range of industries such as consumer, internet and management consulting, and has worked, I believe, not only in India, but across Southeast Asia and Europe as well. We are also joined by 2 higher education professionals, 2 people working directly in universities. Professor Dr. Bama Venkataramani is Dean, and it's a very long name for a European, is Dean in Academics and Administration at SIU in India, and has a lot of professional experience, not just as a dean, but as a teacher, an administrator, and a researcher, as well as a member of a broad range of different boards and committees across higher education. And then finally, Dr. Madhu Chitkara, who is Pro-Chancellor at Chitkara University, also in India, and has a lot of experience in higher education, not only as Pro-Chancellor, but as a teacher and an entrepreneur. And so I think as we live through this moment of change, and I believe personally opportunity, I'm sure they all have much to say about how we can build a supportive ecosystem in international higher education. But before I hand over to them, I would just like to give us a definition for ecosystem that can frame the conversation. It's a word we hear a lot today as more and more sectors find themselves working not only in global environments, but rapidly changing environments. And of course, etymologically, the eco in ecosystem comes from the Greek oikos, meaning home. And so we can perhaps consider this home to be a space with boundaries where we interact with one another and make use of the resources at our disposal. Of course, to call it an ecosystem, it implies that there's a high level of interdependence within the ecosystem. And like all living organisms, in order to thrive, we need to collaborate with one another, but inevitably we will also compete for the available resources. And to do that, we need to evolve and adapt to external disruptions. So life is not always peaceful in the ecosystem. We will interact, collaborate, compete, evolve, and adapt at different levels, because we can consider this ecosystem, this home, to be at institutional level, national, perhaps regional, even international. And so we may be operating in different ecosystems at the same time. And there may be greater or lesser harmony across these different ecosystems. So life in the ecosystem is not without its challenges, and we have become acutely aware of that in the last year. But with challenges come opportunities as well. So to kick off then, in round one, my first question looks at evolution in the ecosystem. And I would like each speaker, from the perspective of their professional role, to say how they see our international higher education ecosystem changing in the current environment. And I'm going to ask Michael to kick off.
Well, thanks, Fiona, and good afternoon, everybody. And thanks for the invitation to this wonderful conference. I thought actually that after being 1 year online and participating in virtual events, I had seen about everything that is possible online so far. But I think I never had health breaks before and health advice before the session. So this is really an enriching experience, and I will take that with me from here. But to answer to your question, Fiona, I think that's a really good point. And just let's start with the fact that we speak more and more about the university and the ecosystem, so no longer about the campus, the institution of the university and the ivory tower. And I think that has to do with the way with the importance of higher education and research have changed over the recent years. They have become more important for society. Somebody talked this morning about rankings, and we still talk about rankings, and they are also important. But I think if I compare the situation now with the situation some years ago, they are not only important. So research is important, but the importance of education has increased over the recent years. And also the link between research and education. This is what we address more and more. How are they linked actually, and how do we ensure that they supplement and enhance each other? And we can see that, and I think that explains then also why we talk about the ecosystem. It's not only about the university, but also about everything in its surrounding, what the university needs from its surrounding, but also what it gives to its surrounding. And that has been discussed for quite a while, I think, at least in Europe, in the local context. So we were talking about the contribution of a university to its region, to the local context, to national level, maybe. How does it help? How does it respond to the labor market? How does it provide inclusive education, brings more people into university? And how does it contribute to the development and the innovation in the region? I think the step that we still have to do is to think that more consequently and act upon at a global level, because you talked about the international ecosystem. And there, I think that gets us now in our current situation and the current crisis. I think one of the benefits of this crisis is that it makes us things understand that we probably have known for a while, but haven't really acted upon. So if you want to tackle this crisis, and that has been demonstrated by scientists, you have to work together across the border. You can't just tackle that in one country, in one university. And I think that's true for many of the grand challenges that we have to address. If you talk about climate change, water, and also for the education that we have to provide. It's not only about educating people for working in their country or in their region. We have to educate them globally. I think that's what I just wanted to bring in here as an introduction. So I think it's a very good moment to reflect a bit more radically about the situation and see what are the consequences for learning and teaching and also for research.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much for that. I hear you saying this need for universities perhaps to look more outwards, not just focusing on what they do inside the institution. And so I hand over now to Raghav, our next speaker, who works for Coursera, and for us in higher education, we would perceive you as a newcomer. That's perhaps not how you see yourselves, but from a perspective of a higher education institution, Coursera is a newcomer. So when you look at this ecosystem, what do you see through your eyes?
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And hello, everyone. I think it's interesting you said Coursera is a newcomer, because I was about to say that Coursera is probably amongst the largest ecosystems in higher education in the world. We've been around for 9 years. There are about 150 universities and 50 companies that teach on our platform. There are 80 million individuals who learn on our platform, and there are about 6,000 institutions, businesses, governments, and campuses that also, teach their constituents on our platform. So it's really interesting for me to be here. I think to the question, and I'm conscious you want us to keep this to 2 minutes, to the question around how international higher education ecosystem might be changing, I look at it as what's happening over the last 1 year as double disruption. Automation was happening in industry. COVID has accelerated that. And in some of our work with institutions around the world, we see 4 challenges for higher education, and I would say 1 big opportunity. The biggest challenge possibly is around student employability for a future of work, which is dramatically changing. There are lesser jobs available. The skills in those jobs are different. Many companies like mine will forever continue to work from home even after COVID goes away, and it requires a lot of digital skills. The second challenge, I would say, has been around doing effective blended classrooms. I think everybody jumped into blended classrooms because COVID forced us to. The experience has been a little bit of a mixed bag. Some have succeeded, some have not succeeded. And this has been a challenge both for the faculty experience and definitely for the student experience. I think the third thing has been around cost management. Tuition fee have been under pressure. Residence or hostel fees have gone away, and cost management has been a big challenge. And then lastly, faculty development, given the accelerated pace at which universities need to think about faculty development, that has accelerated. I think the big opportunity is around capacity. I don't think we are going to see a world in the future where students at a university are limited to the physical campus of the university. So we will see good universities with 10,000 students on campus and 50,000 students off campus. And I think for some of the better universities, it's a big opportunity. I'll pause with those opening comments.
Okay, thank you very much. So while we see you as a newcomer, you're inevitably also a game changer. And many of us have looked to realities such as Coursera to understand what it means to provide online learning. But let's hand over now to our 2 colleagues who are working from within higher education institutions. So Dr. Obama, when you look at this changing context from your perspective, what do you see?
Thank you, Fiona. I'm indeed honored to be sharing the dais with such an august panel. To answer your question, to me, the international higher education ecosystem is that home that includes all those with whom HEIs collaborate with, compete with, report to, and those to whom we are accountable to. And the landscape is the entire globe. Having said that, I'm also conscious that within the university, within the higher education institute, we may have micro ecosystems, like one for research and innovation, one for entrepreneurship, maybe an ecosystem for even cultural integration. Before I give you my response, I'd like to share with you that I'm going to look at all of this through the lens of a higher education institute, and further taking an operational approach to see how HEIs may want to respond to the changing context. COVID-19, according to me, has brought about a tectonic shift in the way we approach all aspects of higher education. It could be teaching, learning, evaluation, adoption of technology, staff welfare. I had seen on the chat Dr. Reddy, who had asked, who was talking about mental health. I think that's going to assume a lot of importance now. Research, engagement with the community, internationalization, administration, accreditation, and so on. But what I think is going to happen in the coming years is that blended learning will definitely become a norm over time. There was a time when ICT belonged to the elite institutes, but now it is a given everywhere. Similarly, blended learning will become a norm over time. Content curation as a discipline will be sought after. Adoption of technology will increase significantly, but for it to result in enhanced access to education, governments may have to explore structures and mechanisms to make available access to internet and equipment to the remotest learner. I agree with Raghav. Faculty development programs will become imperative to provide training programs on use of resources and adoption of technology for student engagement. I think there will be a need to revisit norms of faculty-student ratio, and workload definitions might change. More HEIs will now explore opportunities of offering online degree programs in the modularized format with several entry and exit options, which is also endorsed by our new education policy. And I think there will be emergence of a lot of edtech companies with proctoring solutions and such other interventions that we will require for carrying out this blended learning. I will pause now and I'll wait for more discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I think, yes, we can all identify now that in our ecosystem, technology has become a much more important resource than it was before. But that we should always see technology as the enabler rather than the end game in itself. But Dr. Madhu, from another higher education institutional perspective, what can you add to this conversation?
I think it's an honor. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. And this topic is very near to our, because the people who are from education, and Dr. Rajni is there, and Dr. Bama is there. So we three of them are from a hardcore education background. Raghav is our person who can give us the facility. So I think when we were talking about this and international higher education ecosystem changing, so I think often when you think you are at the end of something, you are at the beginning of something else, which is more exciting, more fruitful, and I think very futuristic. So this is what exactly happening around us in the current environment. We were thinking that this is the end of the road, but new thing has started. Immediate effects have been experienced very closely by all the stakeholders in terms of complete remote delivery of education at a very rapid restructuring of complete university ecosystem. So students have been learning the subjects from home with almost no or minimal interaction among their peer group. That is very challenging for them. And teachers have done a remarkable job to immediately, within a day, switch off from offline mode to online mode, and which ensured that the learning outcomes for the students were not impacted at all. So it becomes our utmost important for the educational institutions to offer quality education with meaningful engagement in a blended way. I think Raghav also was talking about the blended learning, and Dr. Bhama was also talking about the blended learning. So this will open up another disruptive opportunity for the educational institutions to explore new collaborative models, to bring the global educationists on board for their local students. So if you want to have my answer for this particular interaction, it will be that globalization of education will happen in a big way with new collaborative blended models of localization and globalization happening on ground very soon. So as well said by our NEP, National Education Policy, they were saying that we have to go from local to global. So now it is a time where in this time of pandemic, we have learned that how to become local and still we are global.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. I had a little bit of trouble with some of your intervention there. I think at least at my end there was a problem with the bandwidth, perhaps. But I think the general message there about technology again moving very much from periphery to the center of higher education, and you repeatedly used the word new collaborations, and that in fact leads me to my second question, because it focuses on collaboration. Where are the opportunities then for these new collaborations within our ecosystems? Opportunities or perhaps necessities based on what many of you have been saying so far. Are there other ecosystems that we will need to collaborate with, or are the other entities already in our ecosystems? And I'm going to start off with Raghav here, okay, who's perhaps the person who can tell us most about the opportunities that technology can offer, but who are our collaborators in this new blended mode of learning?
Absolutely. So I would say there are possibly three types of collaboration that I see emerging in a big way. The first one I would say is university to university collaboration. Traditionally we've had, as a student, 90% of what a student would probably learn taught by faculty at their university, and 10% being visiting faculty, industry, and so on. We have a platform called Coursera for Campus, and in February last year, there were 150 universities teaching on this platform and 30 universities consuming content from this platform. Today, there are 4,000 universities consuming content from this platform. And across these 4,000 universities, 2.4 million students have consumed 21 million courses. So this university to university collaboration, which I don't think we saw pre-COVID at this stage, at this scale, I think is something which is really kicked off. And I think Dr. Madhu spoke about it. I think it's here to stay even post-COVID. The second piece I think that we are seeing is university and industry collaboration at a completely different scale. I've been in hundreds of, I shouldn't say hundreds, I've been in many conversations where industry-university collaboration comes up. But what we're currently seeing on the Coursera platform is in most jobs in industry professionals need to learn increasingly more and more software tools. I'm using myself, I'm not a computer science professional, but I use like 12 software tools as a part of my daily job. And we're seeing industry wanting to teach students in higher education increasingly. So today there are 55 companies on the Coursera platform who've authored 650 courses, which have been taken by 11 million individuals. That's the scale of industry university collaboration. And the last one I would say is subject matter experts, individuals collaborating with universities. And what I mean by this is last year we launched something called guided projects, where an SME, a subject matter expert, can come and create a short hands-on project on Coursera, which takes 1 to 2 hours to do. And we've had 2 million individuals who are students in universities consume these hands-on learning small projects. So SMEs and universities collaborating is possibly the third ecosystem.
Yes, that is indeed quite fascinating, the degree of change and collaboration that you're outlining for us there, a change that's already underway, perhaps not yet as visible as it's likely to become in the future. So let's go over again now to our university representatives. And so Dr. Obama, again, when you hear this idea of collaboration, does it align with what you see happening from within your institution, or do you see other collaborations emerging?
Actually, I completely concur with Mr. Raghav. So what I'm possibly going to say will be more detailing of what he has said. So I see there is a definite need for collaborations within this international HE ecosystem and within the HEI itself. So when Mr. Raghav is talking about university to industry collaboration, I'm looking at something like a work integrated learning program where a university can collaborate with companies or NGOs to offer bespoke programs in a blended mode. There are also possibilities of collaboration between institutes, administrators, and faculty who can collaborate with the academic fraternity, with educators, practitioners across the globe. So we are probably going to be looking at the South-South collaborations, the South-South-North collaborations for a range of activities, co-creation of courses, co-teaching, research, virtual faculty exchange. Ms. Leon was talking about that. Collaborative conferences and seminars like the one we now have. We could possibly think of creating special interest groups for students to come together for activities beyond academics, for a virtual cultural exchange. Yesterday, Professor Jean Moret was talking about examples, had given examples regarding DePaul University, which had collaborated with a lot of other universities. And actually, it's not as if all these things were not possible before, but the pandemic has actually opened our eyes to such possibilities, which will help us provide a near mobility experience. So yes, these are the possibilities. I think we will also be collaborating with alternative providers of education. For example, Coursera has launched a teacher center to assist instructors in creating online courses. This is something I think we will all be doing, because it's not going to be possible for all of us to actually set up centers which will help us do this. So this is a good opportunity for us to collaborate. And I also think that universities will start collaborating with companies that have capabilities to conduct, to help us with student interventions with the help of AI. So I think there are these possibilities with companies. Within the HEI, I think inter-institute collaboration will now become stronger, where we will be sharing expertise with each other. Teachers can teach across institutes. We can engage in multidisciplinary research, mentor new entrants. There are a whole lot of opportunities. And I will stop with one last point. I think we will now also try and explore the possibility of involving suitably selected students to provide academic and non-academic interventions within and across the institutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. These are all fascinating ideas. Of course, underneath all of that, there's this whole idea of who then is the teacher. The whole idea of what it means to be a teacher, I think, starts to change here too. But that's a whole nother session. But let's hear from Dr. Madhu now. And as you reflect back on this year and look forward, how do you see the collaborations changing for you?
So I think I should continue from where I left in my reply to the last question. So something is told by some of my previous speakers that the blended learning is to be there and the collaborative learning has to be there. So I'm talking about that new collaborative models will make inroads into global education system in coming times. So as the education model going forward, it will be more of the blended in nature, with virtual learning becoming a distinct possibility, and the divide between haves and have-nots will decrease drastically. Now, I will give you one example, that the students now may not go to MITs, Harvards, but MITs and Harvards will come to our doorsteps, because the world is going to be so virtual that anywhere, anytime concept will prevail over the physical on-campus learning. So I think therefore, in my opinion, education systems like India will be the topmost beneficiary out of this pandemic environment. And if top Ivy League institutions would like to survive, I think they must work on close collaboration with the developing countries like India, from where their major foreign intake happens. So it will be a win-win for the students as well as for the education institutions in the current environment to make the maximum out of it. And in that case, we can collaborate, well said by the other speakers, that we can collaborate the university with the university, university with academia. So this will be a proper time where industry, academia interface will give the fruits to the educational system in this point of time. And now it is going, I think another 6 months we have to be in the new normal. And this system has to go ahead with our educational system. It will not stop So along with our normal teaching, this will happen. So this new collaboration has to stay back. So we all have to understand that why we have to collaborate. Raghav well said that they have given us good opportunity during pandemic, and the for full 1 year we were benefited by the courses given by Coursera, and that collaboration has given the fruits to the students as well as to the faculty. I think so. This is a time, best time to collaborate with each other. We have collaborated with Symbiosis University for the Erasmus funding, and that collaboration was a great collaboration where we got the funding, and it was a great take on from different universities. So I think this is a time to collaborate.
Okay, thank you. So you highlight the importance of collaboration, but also point to the pitfall around access and how do we ensure that it is an inclusive collaboration that will involve all students. But over to you now, Michael, from the European perspective, but also through the policy lines. How do you see collaborations changing in this new environment, or where do you see opportunities?
Well, it's actually easy when you come last because you can just agree on what previous speakers had said. So to start probably with the industry, as Rajaf said, I think there has always been industry collaboration, but it's greatly enhanced now. And I think we probably have to also to get more differentiated of what it is actually, because we know that universities collaborate with industry, but why and what format it takes, I think that's different. And that goes from providing continued professional development to industry up to joint research. And sometimes it's not easy to distinguish between these two. So that's one point. The second point that was said about collaboration between universities, I think that's actually very much in the European DNA. I mean, we have been doing that for decades now, Fiona. I mean, that was part of the European project, so to say. But I think where I would agree is that this becomes a different quality now and new opportunities due to the digital exchanges. And there I also agree with Dr. Madhu. I think there are new opportunities for collaboration. Actually, it's wrong to say it's new opportunities. We could have sized these opportunities already 10 years ago, but we didn't do that. Technically feasible, but it hasn't been done. And I think that is changing now. I mean, so in the current crisis, it was a bit of joining the dots in experience. You suddenly realize that the things that were around and that you never used, they could actually be useful. And so I really think that there is a major opportunity to international collaboration. It's at the European policy level. This is greatly emphasized also through the European university initiatives these days. So that's clearly one of the things that we are going to see. But to bring one more point or two more points in, one is that we shouldn't forget all the other collaborations that are there with society more broadly. And I just mentioned schools. I saw in Dr. Barma's CV that you have a career in teaching at different education levels. So I think there is a real opportunity to link up with other education providers, including schools, but also for citizen science, just to throw that in. And I agree with you, this will mean changes for the higher education institution and also for the profession of the, I say academic, because the academics are not only teachers, they are also researchers. So teaching and researching is already quite a lot. But then if you have to do that in different contexts, that makes it even much more complex. And it will be interesting to see what are the university models that we need for this and what are the strategies that they would develop.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Michael. Indeed, yeah, there have been many opportunities out there that perhaps we have been somewhat reluctant to take advantage of. This crisis has been the great accelerator, a global experiment in working virtually. And it's hard to imagine how we will go back from this now. But we will all move forward probably at different speeds. And I'm a little bit conscious of time here. And I do want to give an opportunity for our audience to ask questions. So I'm going to move forward now actually to my last question, because we've been looking or thinking very positively about the way this last year has shaped us, has changed our way of thinking, has opened us up to the possibilities of different ways of working. But there's also perhaps the more challenging side as well. We said at the beginning that within the ecosystem, we collaborate for the resources within that limited space, but we also compete for them as well. And so let's look at the question of competition. Higher education constantly struggles to find a balance between collaboration and competition. And any ecosystem will set up strong barriers to entry for new competition, because it has already found a way of working that gives it its balance and enables it to function. So where do you see threats in this change of paradigm? Are we going to see both winners and losers? What are the threats that we are in fact facing as we move forward, and how might we face these? And I'm going to start with Dr. Madhu. How do we deal with competition here as we seek to change? Do you think there will be winners and losers?
I think everybody is worried and we are concerned. I can say the concern is everybody in education sector is talking about it. And I think disruption is the way forward post COVID-19. And life has taken a full 360-degree turn. And this has forced everyone to come out of their comfort zone and realign to a new normal. We never thought of doing like this, that everything will be online. So that was offline was our comfort zone. We were going to the organizations, talking to students, teaching, learning was happening in a very normal way. And I have a teaching experience of 45 years. So for the last 45 years, I was following a same pattern. So all of a sudden 360-degree change, and everything become online. So I will give you one example. If you see the Kodak in our times when we were very young, so there was the Kodak reels and the cameras were there. So I think in early 2000s, he was the market leader in the field of camera and related products. Now nobody knows about it. Must be in our museums that Kodak camera is there. Now everybody is clicking the photographs on their smartphones or something like this. So I think it was eventually disrupted by the digital camera products. Same thing happened with our postal services, which were, I think we were going to the post offices, post boxes were there. So immediately, because of the emails, because of the technology, same is happening in our educational system. This is a threat, we can say, but it has become an opportunity for the people like us. And there are many examples where we can say that techno-social disruptions happening around us. So this is a time for our education system that not forcibly, but it should be a conscious effort in our new ecosystem that what is to be done. So threats are only for those institutions who are afraid of disruptions and the futuristic realignment in coming times. I think whosoever is quickly recalibrate their education system. Normally we were doing the calibration in our instruments, but now this time has come to recalibrate our education system models, collaborate, then integration of technology in our learning processes, they will survive. And if we at the end, if I want to summarize these four points, so there is nothing like threat or barrier for the existing ecosystem if they are proactively willing to adopt to the new normal and exploit the challenges to their benefit. So, and make these challenges as the opportunities. I think this is a win-win situation for our educational system, which was forced by nature, but I think it has become an opportunity for all the education institutes to collaborate with industry, to collaborate with all the stakeholders, to collaborate with the society. I will give you one example that we have adopted 5 villages. And during this pandemic, whatever collaboration is done, that was not possible for the last 20 years. So I think this is a time and great opportunity to take this as a challenge, not as an opportunity. So challenge and opportunity go hand in hand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I can tell, from your commitment that your institution is very much up for this change process. But of course, we know in higher education, it's one thing declaring an intention, it's another thing making it a reality in higher education. So perhaps, I don't know, Dr. Bama, from your perspective, I know you're committed to the idea of this new world of higher education, but can you see challenges there that might make it difficult to become a reality?
So I agree with Dr. Madhu. The fact is, the higher education institutions are perceiving threats. Alternative providers of education offer online a large number of courses which are industry relevant, which are modularized, which are self-paced, bite-sized courses, which are leading to award of certificates or degrees. There are some HEIs that have already started offering online degrees. So HEIs that are only offering face-to-face programs will perceive them as competition. However, I believe that the target market of each of these providers is not exactly the same. There are students who will still want to go to universities to have that lived experience of going to a university. They will not opt for online degrees. A portion of these students may want to take a course or two or more from alternative education providers, which is fine. Another segment of aspiring learners will definitely prefer only online degrees, come what may, because it suits their requirements. So given this, I think HEIs can respond in two ways. Respond positively to the changing situation and increase their offerings so that there are more online courses and more flexible courses that are available. And wherever possible, I think we must collaborate with alternative providers of education or whoever else we perceive to be as threats, so that we won't have to reinvent the wheel. At the same time, it will be win-win, as Dr. Madhu said. I think it is all about how we respond to the situation.
It is indeed about our willingness to respond, to go beyond the rhetoric. And to really make it a reality. But Michael, from the European perspective, I know you've been looking at different digital collaborations across not just Europe, I believe, but beyond. And what are the learnings there? What have people learned to do to avoid the pitfalls of this change?
I think we probably haven't seen, or at least from the European perspective, I can't see really big pitfalls. What we can say is that the progressive development has probably been slow and much slower as many would have thought and would have aspired. So that's one point. But I would agree with Dr. Bama that overall the institution of the higher education of the university has been confirmed. So that's probably different from what we saw, I remember, around 2012, 2013, when Coursera was developed and many other tech companies which provide a fantastic service for the international learner communities, but they haven't really replaced universities. And that was one of the assumptions that was at the time. That said, on the other hand, I can clearly see that there are some threats and concerns, and we have seen that already now in the crisis, where comparing what we saw in Europe with what we saw internationally, you could see clear differences. Most universities in Europe, or the European higher education systems, are mainly publicly financed. But in countries where you have mainly private universities relying on tuition fees, I think the pressures to cope with the crisis were much harder was much harder than it was probably in Europe. But that said, we can also see now post-crisis that there will be challenges also in Europe. And that depends also on whether you would have the financial means to, for example, to invest into the digital infrastructure that you need to compete on these issues and to provide a good service to students.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's wrap up here then with Raghav from Coursera. Do you see yourself as a competitor here or a collaborator with higher education in response to some of these challenges that have been mentioned?
Yeah, I think that's an easy question to answer. It's the latter for sure, which is the collaborator answer. And I think to the broader question about, how should one be thinking about ecosystems that can create strong barriers to entry for new competition? I say this firstly on a lighter note, right? It's a good idea to be a part of the ecosystem in the first place. Don't be outside it, be inside the ecosystem. But I think outside of that, on a more serious note, I think it starts with mindset. I think the pace of change that we have seen in the last 1 year, I think sometimes it can be hard to appreciate how much has changed around you when you're in the middle of that change. So I think it does start with mindset. But I do want to say, I don't think this opportunity or this change is so much about winners and losers. If you look at a country like India, right, there are 38 million students in higher education. Only 26 out of 100 kids coming out of class 12 go to higher education. The government has been talking about pushing that up to 50% to get 38 million students to go to 55 to 77 million students. There is no way this can happen with physical campuses. There is no way this can happen with actual investments into campuses on the ground. We don't have land to be able to, set up so many campuses. And I think instead of thinking about this as a winner versus loser kind of a situation, I think this is an opportunity to serve society in countries like India and many other countries around the world, where higher education can actually have a massive impact on people's lives. And I think if we can reduce the barriers to access, if we can increase the amount of high quality education that is available, I think we would have served our purposes. There are so many reports which talk about how 80-90% of higher education quality in India is not up to the kind of standards that we might want it to be. And I think this is an opportunity to collaborate and bring that up. Like I was saying earlier, right? A higher quality education ecosystem will emerge, and we will have many universities who are leading universities, who will have on-campus students and many off-campus students as well. SIU probably has about 20,000 students on campus today. Maybe there will be 100,000 students off campus in the near future. And I think that's what the ecosystem might look like.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We have some questions coming in from our audience now, and a number of them are addressing this issue where offline and online are seen as two opposite ends of the spectrum, and how can you, through the online experience, replicate the in-person campus experience. And I think in general, from what I'm hearing from what a lot of you are saying today, it's not really an either or necessarily, but that there are many, it's actually opening up a possibility to individuals to build a program that suits them, that you could go 100% online, 100% in person, but a modern quality university of the future will look to offer opportunities for students to study in a range of different modes, and in particular looking at internationalization. If we want to offer an international experience to all students, then the virtual classroom is indeed one way to bring students together without all the challenges and costs associated with physical mobility. So I think the issue we perhaps put to one side now is, how do you replicate the in-person experience? I think it's about offering as many different combinations of study that allow different people in different situations to make a choice. However, there are a couple of interesting questions in there that perhaps touch on topics we haven't really looked at. I'll say both of these questions, and you can choose which one you would like to answer. One is perhaps aimed more for Mbama and Madhu around what are the implications of all of this for individual faculty?
I think.
What does it mean? Okay, perhaps the other question that Raghav and Mikael could look at is around if students are free to pick up modules of study from different universities, how do you compile that into a degree, a recognizable quality program? You may have some comments around that. But let me bring in Madhu and Bama, first of all, to comment about how do they see these changes impacting individual faculty? What is the responsibility of the higher education institution towards its faculty in preparing them for these changes?
Yes, I believe that it is, see, all the, up till now, we were talking about what are the things that are possible and what are the things that we can explore and do. But now we'll have to come down to how are we going to have it done? And for that, I think it's the responsibility of a higher education institution to provide a very conducive environment to help faculty deliver. So towards this, I think we should conduct a number of faculty development programs on creation of online content, effective use of technology and platforms for effective delivery, engage with a diverse class that will come with an enhanced access. So when access is going to be enhanced, we expect more students to join. The class can be diverse. So how are we going to help them? Many of them may be first generation learners. So how are we going to engage with a diverse class? We'll also have to look at how are we going to design our assessments to test and to assess the attainment levels of the desired learning outcomes. And there are a number of questions on the chat box about how are we going to engage with our students. I think here we may have to take the help of artificial intelligence interventions, which will give personalized interaction with students. I believe there are some available which even help students find library resources, library articles to learn. I think there's a lot to explore. Right now, we may not have all the answers, but we definitely have an opportunity to explore and see how we can support our faculty. Because without all of that, I think it will lead to immense stress because there are newer demands on faculty's time. There are newer roles that they have to play. And therefore, we will have to also provide them with that mental health support. So I think there is a huge role that the HEIs that the HEIs will have to play in supporting the faculty members.
Indeed, and I think those universities that traditionally have always had strong faculty development are well placed to move forward. We know in many higher education institutions that whole idea of faculty development is still, let's say, embryonic, and they will perhaps be more challenged in bringing their faculty along with these changes. But Dr. Madhu, what is your experience here?
So I think there is one question by Mr. Yogesh Goswami. He's asking that online teaching may be good, but what about human touch and human emotions? Can they be replaced or not needed in future? I think for this, we all are concerned in our education institutions that the only and only online teaching will not work because the students, when we are talking to them, normally it is not happening that the teacher is teaching and the students are learning. That 70% of the teaching goes out of the classroom when they are interacting with their peers, when they are interacting with the other people, with the other stakeholders. I think that learning is also a part of our whole ecosystem of education. So this is a very pertinent question where we all are concerned that it is not possible for proper online teaching. We are talking to the students, and for that we have made a mentor group where very regularly we are talking to them that there should not be any problem in their mental quotient or mental thought, because this time it is important to talk about the emotional quotient rather than the IQ. Reason being that sitting at home, sitting with the parents and not going out, not talking to not meeting, talking, I'm not concerned, but meeting with the peer groups, meeting with the teacher physically is becoming a problem. So this is also again a challenge post-COVID.
I think the point there is clear. Of course, we've been operating in crisis mode. Yes. As we move forward, that is no longer acceptable. Of course, again, this is for another session, but I think what should be happening online is learning and not teaching. And I think that the whole point is that it actually invites for a very different way of being a teacher. And a lot of what we've been doing at the moment has been online teaching rather than online learning. We've got 4 minutes left, and I want to give both Michael and Raghav a chance to comment. So on that bigger idea of, if we do give this degree of flexibility to students to pick and choose modules from across higher education institutions, in presence mode, online mode. How do we build a degree out of that? I know 2-minute question, a 2-minute answer is not a lot, but just your first thoughts on that. Michael, I can see you're ready to go.
Just if I may, just one comment on the previous issue. I think if we think of teaching in the future, it's probably also more teaching as a team effort and not of an individual academic providing and delivering all this. I think that's something that we see emerging. But on the question, I really can't answer it. I only know that it is done already. I mean, open universities have been doing that. You arrive with your bag of previous formal and informal learning, and they turn that into a degree. So it's possible. It's not easy. It's also kind of costly, but if it saves you 3 years sitting in the classroom or learning online, then it's worth the money. Will that be the common way of learning? I doubt that, also for the reasons that Dr. Bama and Dr. Maru had said. I think there is the university as the social place. And if we understood one thing in this crisis, was that not everything that is technically feasible is socially desirable. So university is also the place where people meet and exchange and do things that they hadn't planned to do.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Michael. And the last word to you, Raghav. Any thoughts on these very student-driven degree programs and how you construct them?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I share that, and I know there's been a bit of commentary about how much should be online and how much should go back to campus. And because I've experienced some of this, I'll make a quick comment. At least our expectation is that once COVID goes away, depending on discipline, we might see 60 to 80% of the teaching and learning going back to campus and maybe 20 to 40% staying online. And maybe in a computer science program, it's 20%, and maybe in a liberal arts program, it's 20% online, depending on the programs that we will see. I don't think the importance of human interaction is underappreciated by anybody, I think, in the higher education ecosystem. In terms of students assembling their own degree, and we were debating this at Coursera the other day, is there a model called Build Your Own Degree, BYOD, right? I don't think we have an answer just yet. I think there might be guardrails that university leadership, academic leadership needs to continue to provide, to say, look, here's the broad guidance in which you can possibly customize what your learning experience might look like. I don't think somebody coming out of school, 18 years old, is fully equipped to be able to say, this is what my degree program will look like. But the debate does continue on our side internally. I'm letting the cat out of the bag a little bit by sharing this, but yeah, it's something that we are debating on our side a little bit as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're down to the end of our session now. Just to wrap up very quickly, one key message about developing a supportive ecosystem. What came through, I thought, really in all your comments is what, being true to the institutional mission. I think if an institution, higher education institution, knows what its purpose is, who it wants to serve, in what way it wants to make impact, it will inevitably choose the resources available to make that happen. Here we're focusing on technology, but it could also be, as we've talked about, who do we cooperate with, and how international do we need to be? So it is ultimately about understanding why we exist and what we want to achieve, and then identifying the other entities in our ecosystem and the resources available to that ecosystem to make it happen. So it always starts with us, as ever. So thank you everyone for taking part. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope the panel did too, and I can see plenty of comments of appreciation coming in the chat. So thank you to everybody for listening to us here today. And I hand back over to our organizers.
Thank you, Dr. Fiona, and the speakers. It's spectacular to hear how HEIs, organizations, governments, societies are now preparing for a resilient ecosystem that encompasses institutional vision and philosophy, curriculum, professional development, learning, support, infrastructure, facilities, resources to ensure that there's more inclusiveness, equity in partnerships and research and evaluation. So thank you very much for those perspectives. Thank you to all the participants who have joined us from 35 countries today.